Hello everyone, my name's Hemingway Jones. Welcome to the channel. This is our little corner of the internet where we talk about fountain pens, inks, journals and journaling, pretty much anything and everything that will keep you inspired to keep writing. Coming to you today from my library as I usually am, and today I'd like to speak about a topic that's really interesting, has a lot of different components and a lot of room for opinion and counter opinion, and that's about the different filling mechanisms for fountain pens. I'm going to go through each one and talk about what I think is good and bad about them, and then which one is my favorite. So I hope you'll stick around for that. So without further ado, let's jump right into the topic. For today's topic, we're going to go through all the different filling mechanisms for fountain pens. And we're going to go in order with those that you're most likely to encounter first, down to the ones that are a little bit more rare. But we're not going to get too esoteric. We're going to stick to the main ones. I'm going to tell you the strengths and the weaknesses of each one and why I think my personal favorite is the best. So I hope you'll stick around for that. Let's take a quick break for a pen check. So today I'm using my Blue Do Flex pen, and the reason is I just got a new nib for it. Unfortunately, I splayed my tines while filming a video. One of the things that's sort of tough is when you film through a screen and you're trying to figure out your pressure, you can definitely make a mistake, as I did. So I splayed my tines. I was very unhappy. I didn't think I could fix it myself with needle nose pliers, so I ordered a new set of nibs from the good folks at Blue Do. They came in, and this pen now writes amazing once again. So I am re-familiarizing myself with this magnificent pen. And I have Diamine Oxblood in it right now. It is a fantastic writer. So our first type of filling mechanism, and the one that is the most common and the one which you will encounter right away, is the ink cartridge. So ink cartridges are ubiquitous with fountain pens. They're shipped with virtually every fountain pen, except for some ones we'll speak about later. So ink cartridges have many advantages and certainly have some disadvantages. So one of the major advantages is they're very easy to use. It's very easy to get writing fast. When you think of a pen like the Lamy Safari, it's shipped with a bit of cardboard, a cardboard ring that keeps the pen from sealing in the cartridge into the feed while it's being shipped. You take that ring of cardboard off, put the pen together, and it automatically puts that cartridge right in the spot it needs to be, and the pen will begin writing. So from a convenience and ease, and even from the point of being very tidy, a cartridge is super easy and a fantastic way to bring ink into the feed and onto the paper. Another great advantage to cartridges is that they're super easy to carry. You can carry spares. You don't really have to worry about them leaking or any problems whatsoever. So you could carry 3 or 4 different backup cartridges at any given time and keep on writing. So it's super, super convenient. When other pens need a bottle to fill, you can simply jam in another cartridge and keep on writing. So that is definitely a plus. Now, I remember when I first got into fountain pens way back in the early 1990s, they pretty much came in black or blue. the different cartridges, now you can get cartridges in a rainbow of colors. Now, one of the disadvantages is that you have to purchase each of these different colors, and you have a whole case full of the different cartridges, but that's really not much different than having the different bottles as we all do. A disadvantage of using cartridges is that it is designed to be disposable. So now you're almost in ballpoint pen territory where you have a disposable, consumable element to your fountain pen where you use it and you toss it. Now, how I get around this, and I know a lot of other fountain pen enthusiasts get around this, is to use an ink syringe so that when it's empty, you can clean it out with water, you can flush it with the ink syringe, and then put whatever color you want in that cartridge, and then it acts basically like a converter at that point. And I actually enjoy using cartridges that way, and I normally use the cartridge that comes with the pen, and then I use it over and over again with different types of ink. So it cuts down on the consumable element. But all in all, cartridges are a great option. They're very easy, clean, tidy, and a great way to get writing right away. Our next type of fill mechanism is the converter. And there are many different types of converters, but you're most likely to encounter some type of piston converter with a nice little twist knob on it. Now for this, you basically take the pen apart, you reveal the converter, put the nib into the ink, twist it, suck up the ink into the converter, and you're ready to go. Now, one of the things that makes this really great to use is that you can simply suck up any ink you like from any bottle. So it makes it really easy to change ink colors and to explore all the different fabulous inks out there. It also gets you into the action of filling the pen, where you have to immerse the nib and think about it very consciously what you're doing so you don't make a mess. And it definitely helps you to bond with your pen, if you will. And I think that makes it a lot more fun and definitely more tactile while you get into this hobby. Now, one of the downsides of using the converter is that you do have to take the pen apart. And that can be a little cumbersome. You have the body of the pen rolling around on your desk while you do what you do, so you definitely have to be careful with all the different moving parts. It actually helps to get a rubber pad. I have a pad that I use when I am servicing my mechanical watches, and I use that quite a bit when I fill my pens as well. An advantage of using the converter is that since you are sucking ink through the nib, and I always squeeze a couple of drops out after I fill it, so your nib is very much primed and ready to write. Whereas if you use a cartridge, you can wait a little bit while gravity does its work and fills the feed up with enough ink to begin writing. So there is a bit of a quickness there, but you certainly have to go through the whole fill mechanism. So if you really look at the time invested, it about nets out. So with the different types of converters, you might see a squeeze converter like in the Pilot Metropolitan. They're also on a lot of Chinese pens. They're very effective. I don't care for them personally, but I do like the fact that they're very low tech and there's very little that can go wrong. There are also plunger converters, like Kaweco has these. They're often in smaller pens and it's a way to get it a little more space in there, and those work fine. I enjoy those as well. Now there is the whole debate, and I talked about it as one of the myths, whether or not writing with a cartridge or converter has more ink flow and is more enjoyable. Personally, I think they're a very similar experience and I can find no real discernible difference between the two. One thing to be aware of with converters is there's definitely different grades of them. In cheaper pens, you'll see very plasticky ones, which aren't as robust and will not last through the years quite as long as one that's made out of really solid metal and glass, as there are in more expensive pens. I'm thinking about my Schaefer Legacy that has this gorgeous converter in glass and metal. That thing has lasted me already 16 years. I have had some of the cheaper plastic ones wear out or just have issues. So the plus is that you can certainly swap them out cheaper than the more expensive ones. But nevertheless, converters are a fantastic option. They're a lot of fun to get writing with different sorts of inks. They're super easy to clean, and if something does happen, they're super easy to service because you can simply pop out the converter, toss it, and get a new one. Whereas if you have the next type of pen that we're about to talk about, having a problem is a bit more complex. So our next type of fill mechanism is the internal piston fill. And personally, I love this fill mechanism. I think there's a certain elegance to it. It's featured on inexpensive pens like the TWSBI Eco, all the way up to Mont Blancs and other pens for $1,000 or more. So it is usually associated with more expensive pens because there's much more that needs to go into the manufacturing of it. But nevertheless, TWSBI does an amazing job with their piston fill mechanisms. So where the piston fill mechanism is a bit more civilized than a converter, if you will, is that you don't need to take the pen apart. There's usually some sort of a twist mechanism where you put the nib of the pen into the ink, twist the mechanism right on the pen, suck the ink up, and you're done. It's just very clean, very easy, very integrated. And I love that technology. I love the simple grace of it. I personally like the idea of a pen where everything is working in union, where nothing needs to be taken apart too drastically to fill something. It's simply a turn and then you're ready to write. I think there's just something so satisfying in that. Now, where there could be an issue is that should something happen over time, one of the seals inside wear out, as they do, then servicing it is a much bigger deal than if you just have a converter where you can just toss it and swap out a new converter. In this case, with most of these pens, unless you're a trained technician, it's going to take a trip to the pen hospital before you can make it right, with the exception of TWSBI. I mean, TWSBIs are so marvelous. They're just designed to be field stripped and to be fixed by people who use them every day. I really love that about them. It would be interesting if TWSBI ever decided to make a high-end pen out of precious resin and 18 or 21 karat gold nib. It would be fascinating if they took that same idea that you could field strip it and fix it, and yet it was a luxurious and extravagant pen made by TWSBI. I don't know if that would be too far out of their brand identity, but it would be certainly an interesting idea. So I have piston filled pens. A lot of my vintage pens are filled that way. My Mont Blanc 149, my Mont Blanc Egyptomania. My Pinator has a cool key that goes on the end to twist it. That's a lot of fun. And as I said, my favorite TWSBI pens. So maybe I've given myself away, but this is my favorite type of fill mechanism, despite the problems. If you were to talk to me logically, I'd say the converters are probably best, because if there's an issue, you can simply swap them out, but there's just something so elegant and refined about a piston filled. Now, just because it's my favorite doesn't mean that I'm also not intrigued by our next type of fill mechanism. So the last type of fill mechanism I'm going to speak about today is also the most dramatic, the most amazing, the most filled with showmanship. And of course, I'm talking about a vac filled pen. These are such amazing pens, not only because of how fun they are to fill, but also because they normally have a tremendous ink carrying capacity and wonderful ink flow. And they have certain other features that make them interesting and very preferable for some people, and I'll get into those. But first, I want to talk about what it is. So essentially, a vacuum filled is a pen that has a plunger mechanism inside and some space, so that as you plunge the nib into the ink and press that plunger down, it creates a vacuum that then sucks a large quantity of ink into the pen. And what makes it so dramatic and so spectacular is that it's often accompanied by this incredible hydraulic noise as the ink rushes in with this fantastic whoosh. It's really satisfying and really fun, especially with the Pilot Custom 823, which may be the most exquisite expression of this type of pen. You may have seen my review of it recently where I asked the question, can a pen be too perfect? And this pen certainly begs that question. It is an extraordinary pen that does an extraordinary job, and its fill mechanism is just so much fun to use. It's so great for carrying a large amount of ink, and the writing experience is just amazing, almost transcendent. So one of the big advantages of a Vac Fill mechanism is that you can seal it off if you're going to fly. Now personally, I never had any problem flying with any pen. However, if you're really worried about it and you want to make sure that nothing will happen, you can definitely seal a vac filled pen so that the ink does not expand and does not leak, and you'll have nothing at all to worry about. So that is definitely a big advantage of those if you travel quite a bit. Now, another place where you will see a fantastic vac-filled pen, and one of the greatest values out there in the fountain pen world, is my beloved TWSBI Vac 700Rs. Either the Demonstrator or the Magical Mermaid Iris. Both of those pens are extraordinary. They're fun to fill. They're not quite as dramatic or showmany as the Pilot Custom 823 is. Nevertheless, you can get a lot of ink in them. They write amazingly, very smooth, very consistent. Quality control is great, and they're just a joy to use. So vac-filled pens are some of my favorites. I have both of those, and there's certainly others, and I'm sure we'll speak of more as we move along. So what do you think of my ideas on the pen fill mechanisms? Do you disagree with anything I've said? Let me know in the comments. Which is your favorite? Is it the cartridge for its portability? Or do you also feel guilty that you're using a consumable that's going to end up in a landfill, or worse, the ocean? What do you think of converters? Do you mind that you need to disassemble a pen? Or do you appreciate the fact that they're easily swapped out and super easy to use and to clean? How about the piston filled pens? Do you love them as much as I do? Do you find them to be integrated and elegant and interesting? And lastly, vac filled pens. How much do you love them? Do you like to use them though? Do you appreciate the fact that you can fly with them? That's certainly a big advantage. Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I appreciate you staying around till the end. If you could do me one more favor, please like, comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. I'd like to see you again, and I'm trying to build a following here on YouTube. So I release a new video each week, Thursday at noon Eastern Time. So I look forward to seeing you again further up the road. Take care.